On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder go for their first series win since 2016. Can the Thunder get it done? Can the Thunder break out the brooms and more?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, let's get it going. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Monopoly Go. I admit that I have a bit of a competitive side to me, and I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go. It allows me to get that competitiveness out with a mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly game that you all know and love. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go today, now for free on the App Store or the Google Play Store. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. Let's dive into, can the Thunder get their first series win since 2016? Are they going to break out the brooms here in New Orleans as we recorded as live, anyway, from the hotel lobby of my hotel? That's pretty redundant. Not going to dox where we're at right now, but no one really cares anyway. But this is the night before Game 4. What a great time that we had tonight in New Orleans. Shout out to the Thunder PR staff and Layla and JR and Cole and Dan and Matt and everybody involved. Great night. Fantastic night. Vibes immaculate. But the vibes are also immaculate on the court. And the Thunder were able to get a massive win on Saturday. And I think that lost in Saturday's game. I will rehash some of Saturday's topics because I will admit we fumbled a little bit, right? We came out here to cover this series, the Saturday recap podcast, the environment in which we recorded in, we thought was going to be cool to record at the arena. We've never done that before anywhere, at the Paycom Center or anywhere else. Did not account for how much background noise there is when you are tearing down an arena and putting in a whole new floor and putting in a whole new set of just hardwood for game number 4 as the Pelicans shift to their City Edition court. That's on me. Apologize for that. So let's rehash Game 3. Let's preview Game 4, and let's talk about how the rest of the NBA is really breaking the way for the Thunder. But in Game 3, I think that by the end of it, you're caught up in what a fantastic game. The Thunder blew out the Pelicans. The Thunder fan base took over the Smoothie King Center. And I do want to touch on the fans here in a second. But lost in that is that on the first play of the game, Jalen Williams drives to the basket, gets hammered in the face on accidental contact, and leaves the game. And so you're thrusting in a rookie. For all this inexperienced talk, for all of this youth talk, you relied on a rookie to help you steady the waters and at the very least tread water until you could come around offensively. Because that game was not a pretty sight offensively to start this contest. It was not. But what is something that I think is dependable is the defense. Because defense travels, defense plays home and away, defense plays against any opponent. If defense is mainly about what you're doing. And so is it going to be the expectation for the next series to be a team that holds the Clippers or the Mavericks, whoever comes out of that matchup? Is the expectation going to be to hold them to 92 points or fewer in every single game? Of course not. But the discipline and the things that go into defense is largely based upon stuff that you can control, like we can control everything here. So I think that you have to look at the defensive end of the floor for the Thunder. And that's why I believe that they can, win any series that they're put in front of. Because even when the offense is not clicking, even when the offense does not have it, they're able to dig in defensively and buy themselves time for the future. And that's what happened in Game 3. It was an afternoon game, something that they've struggled with all year long is playing in the afternoon. You're playing against a hungry team that does not want to go down 0-3 because we know what that means in the NBA. To this point, it's been insurmountable. Now, let's put that in perspective. At one point in our lifetime, it was unthought of for a 16 seed to beat a 1 seed. Then the dam broke, and it's been happening left, right, and center in the March Madness tournament. At one point, it was unthinkable to come back from down 3-1. And so, this is not over. The series is not kaput. But historically speaking, it is. And the vibes of the court, while it technically is possible to rattle off 4 straight wins, the vibes on the court of the Pelicans is just a dejected bunch, a depleted bunch, and a group that just wants to be done with this series. They want to be done with this season. They have outright quit in this game. But before they quit, it was the Thunder's defense that held them together. And whenever you have a defense like that you can hang your hat on, when you have a defense like that can keep everybody in line and keep treading water on the scoreboard, it can translate to the offensive end of the floor because this team's just too talented. Like, you're not going to hold SGA down for long. You're not going to hold Chet down for long, J-Dub down for long. And you get a hot shooting night from Giddey. You get a hot shooting night from Dort. Like, this team is 10-ish players deep of guys who you would trust to go and help you score the basketball and also help you defend. And so the odds of you not being able to conjure up 3 to 4 guys that can really help you offensively is very, 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 very slim. And I'm not going to act like they went on the road in this raucous environment. I don't know how it sounded on TV. In person, it was just awful. This was the worst crowd I've ever experienced. I was transported back to my days at the Aggie gym. Shout out Cameron. But it was not good. But nonetheless, this has been a team that has not played well in the afternoon, has not played a away playoff game, although that's a technicality. They did play an away play-in game in the same building last season. But still, I think that they handled the results very well. But lost in the J-Dub injury was that Casey Wallace had to come in extremely early and play for a longer stint than what he normally has been asked to do. And with that is another sign, and it's another point to this uncommon maturity and this trust that you can put in this team. That's an illustration, a living, breathing example of why I think that they can beat anybody. I wouldn't pick them against Denver or Boston, but why I think that they could beat those two teams. And at that point, if you can beat those two teams, you can beat anybody. But it's a living, breathing example of the messaging that might sound a bit corny, especially after certain games. Whenever you're talking about the uncommon maturity and the 0-0 mentality, you have a team who has never experienced the playoffs before. They go up 2-0, and that is featuring the last game that they played was a just complete and total barn burner where they blew out the Pelicans. They head on the road up 2-0 as the 1 seed, youngest number 1 seed in NBA history, and a team that had things come easy to them the very last game. And in game 1, while you only scored 94 points, as we said on this podcast, the very hour that the game ended, the lack of scoring was not from anything that the Pelicans did. It was from the Thunder missing open shots that they typically make. So you have a team that could have been, high on the hog, could have been way too amped to be in this moment or too relaxed even of thinking the series is over. They come out, they get hit in the mouth a little bit in the sense of it was just a slugfest early on, a snoozer early on from the crowd to the play on the court. It was a rock fight to begin this game. To losing with their number 2 scorer in J-Dub in the first minute of the game, relying on a rookie, treading water defensively, and then blowing this game out. So that all unfolded in the span of 48 minutes. And that's what we've been seeing in Oklahoma City for so long. And that's why I think that if you're someone who's followed this podcast every single day, if you're someone who's followed this team every single day, you've kind of scoffed at the notion of this team being too young. I do not believe at all that the downfall of this team, whenever that happens, if they win the NBA Finals, if they lose next round, if they lose a 3-0 series lead somehow, no matter when that downfall comes, I do not think it'll be tied to inexperience or tied to their youth. It's not as though that these guys are going to freak out in any single moment of the game. And at that point, if they don't freak out, as people would project the young team to, you're looking at a top 5 defense, top 5 offense, which is translated and carried over to the postseason. Now, how much of that sample size is Pelicans being not so talented as an 8th seed? You're playing an 8th seed and a depleted 8th seed at that. And how much of that is forced by the Thunder? How much of that is something that the Thunder are impacting that would translate to any single matchup? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Game 3 and keys to Game 4, as well as this bracket busting the Thunder's way, all coming up. But I think that Casey Wallace deserves a lot of credit for that Game 3 win, Game 1 on the road. for what happened on Saturday afternoon. Sunday night, it's going to take the Thunder leaning on their identities. It's going to take the Thunder leaning on that 0-0 mindset up 3-0. We'll talk about that coming up. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at Nissan. Check out Nissan right now because they're great, and you're going to want to take your adventure further. When you do with the Nissan Pathfinder, the Nissan Rogue, it's going to help you take that adventure further at Shop Nissan right now. Shop Nissan right now at nissanusa.com because if you're the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further to the limit, make sure you check them out. They have the perfect SUVs for whatever your need is. So, for example, the 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for the city drivers who want the great escape. It is the classic exclusive Google built-in, all the amenities that you could want on a 12.3-inch HD touchscreen display. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. If you want something a little bit more spacious, you can go with the Nissan Pathfinder. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room for up to 8 with expansive cargo and the available 4x4 capacity with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing. Check them out today at the Nissan Pathfinder. That is the one that you want to check out right now at nissanusa.com. So if it's the Nissan Armada, Nissan Pathfinder, or a Nissan Rogue, you want to go for your next big adventure at Nissan. Also want to say right now about our good friends over at Monopoly Go. I do have a competitive side to me. Anyone can attest to that. But a game that lets me fulfill my competitive nature is Monopoly Go. It's game on Monopoly Go. It's for free on the App Store or Google Play Store. I mean, it has the exact formatting, or if you want to say, as the classic Monopoly game with a mobile hit twist. You play your friends in time tournaments. You work together to build each other's boards, or you can go and crash them with a bank heist and kind of destruct their city, if you will. I love it. Me and my friends play it all the time. We have a leaderboard. We always put in the group chat who's up, who's down, and always react whenever the other members of the group chat are able to pull off a bank heist. So check it out today at Monopoly Go. It's a new, exciting way to play every day with consistent, challenging tournaments and other challenges for you. So it has a ton to include your unique mini games and your friendships rekindling and growing at Monopoly Go. Check it out today. Get off and running at Monopoly Go right now on the Google Play Store or the App Store. Game on. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Subscribe for free across all podcasting platforms so you never miss an episode. We'll find a better place to record the post-game podcast for Game 4, hopefully talking about the Thunder moving on to round 2 for the first time since Kevin Durant was in town in 2016. What about this series is translatable to round 2, I think is an interesting topic, and one that we will belabor for the coming weeks. But just to give you a little taste of it, a little shot, if you will, I think it's a little column A, column B. Obviously, the Pelicans or Clippers, whoever moves on, they have better scores than the Pelicans do, for sure. If you're having to deal with Luka and Kyrie, that's very tough. You saw what Paul George did today as he goes to the Scotch hop to put the game away for the Clippers after blowing a 30-point lead. You saw what he was able to pull off. Like, they just have these unique scorers who will score more than 92 points in a game, assuredly. By the same token, though, they each are very vulnerable, and they each present interesting matchups on both ends of the floor. An example would be like Lou Dort. Lou Dort would not hold Luka to the 15-ish points that he holds Brandon Ingram to right now. And Brandon Ingram's been just awful in this series. Can't even get a shot up. As much as I think that Lou Dort is the thing of the world of Lou Dort and how great of a defender he is, Luka Doncic is Luka Doncic. But if you're the Thunder, could you almost just let Luka and Lou play one-on-one? And that might lead and would lead to some big, stats from Luka. He might get 30 points a game, obviously, but because you're so long, because you're so versatile, because you're so good defensively everywhere else as well, if Luka beats you and you have these other guys spraying out and these other guys staying home, do you at that point have enough firepower or more firepower to win the game that way in a shootout? And so that goes back to what we've said all year long. This has been a common thing. You can check the tapes all year long of Lockdown Thunder, where we talk about how versatile this team is at winning. They can win grinded out games like game 1. They can win games where they have everything going for them offensively, like game 2. And then game 3 against the Pelicans, it was a rock fight at first. They found their footing and they ran with it on the road in game 3. I think that there's an aspect of this that's untranslatable, which is the 92 points or less given up. You're just not going to do that next round. But there's also an aspect of it that is going to get better in round 2. I think you look at what Shai's done and what Jacob's done, and the offense in general has done. And not to say that any of those guys has been bad, but life gets easier for them. Life gets easier for them whenever their point of attack defender isn't Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and this Pelicans crew. Whenever life is Luka Doncic getting put into every single pick and roll action, it's going to get much better. Things are going to get easier. Things are going to get brighter. Ooh, child, it's going to be great. So I think that there's parts of it that will dampen a little bit, but see the dampen of not doing 92 points per game or less and pushing that number up while also pushing up the offense, I think will offset each other to the point of the Thunder will still look like the 1 seed next round. We keep waiting for the other shoe to drop nationally of like the people who have just kind of flown by night, flown into this team that hasn't watched them play. Like they keep kind of talking about this team as if they're an atypical 1 seed. Other than their birth certificate, they're not. They're not. The analogy we've used all year long is that, if you wrote down every weakness of the Thunder and then did that same thing for 29 other teams, the Thunder will have less weaknesses than anyone else. Maybe Boston has less or the same, but everyone else has more than 2 weaknesses. And the Thunder are in a unique position because you're never going to craft the perfect team. The Thunder are in a unique position to counteract their weakness with their ability to play up-tempo and to push the pace. I look at the Thunder and what they've done in game 1, which was the big story of second chance points. The net of second chance points for the Pelicans was 13. The net of transition points for the Thunder was 13. If you can wash that out as they have this postseason, I believe the Thunder have the better roster top to bottom of these next two rounds. It's going to come down to that, though. Can you continue to push? Can you continue to push space? You're in transition, turning teams over. And some of these Pelicans turnovers, while they've been high turnover numbers, a lot of them have been offensive fouls. That's going to be a less controllable thing in round 2, right? I think that part of the problem with the Pelicans' offensive fouls is that they're setting lazy screens, frankly. They're the screener and handler are both handling it very lazily, and Lu Dort's the best in the business at attacking that. Whereas I think that you'd expect as the rounds go on, the opponents get tougher, they won't give those sort of things away. But what I'm interested to see this theory get tested is a theory I've had all year long of while maybe it won't be turnovers, we've seen that this team can defend for 48 seconds if they need to, right? Like we've seen this team can defend for a long period of time. And so maybe it's not turnovers in the raw box score, but maybe it's 3 deflections on a play, and now the shot clock's at 1.2, and now you're just jacking up some wild shot that if it goes in, you tip your cap and you move on. But like more often than not, it's not going to go in. So there's a lot of stuff I think that is translatable to round number 2 versus just a poo-poo bad opponent, like push it aside as a non-factor. I think that the one aspect that I would want to see the Thunder handle would be you're never going to play a crowd this docile again in the playoffs. Not that I think that it plays an overly overwhelming role, but it does play a role for sure. You're not going to play a crowd like this again. This is a terrible crowd. And you're not going to have, I don't think, 2 blowout wins in the next series. Now, you might win comfortably a couple times, but I don't think you're going to have 2 blowout wins. So what do they look like as the games get tighter? They looked very good in game 1. And they've looked very good all year long in tight games. But it's just another hurdle that they're going to have to eventually clear as they go through this postseason. We'll talk about game 4, because I think it's important for the Thunder to put this series away tonight. Not in the scheme of losing this series. I do not believe the Pelicans have any shot at winning this series. So come up behind me. You can go listen to Locked On Pelicans and Jake Madison. This series is over, but putting it to bed tonight is very advantageous for the Thunder. We'll talk about why that is coming up. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at DoorDash. Check out DoorDash today. It's fantastic. And, maybe you didn't know this, but did you know that DoorDash has these fantastic options for you that's beyond just delivering you a McDonald's cheeseburger, right? It can also deliver you some great items from personal care, household items, and there's holidays around the corner, birthdays around the corner. And maybe those dates sneak up on you and you decide, oh, I forgot to get a gift for that special someone. Let me just DoorDash it, and it arrives here, and we act like we ordered it a long time ago, and we're waiting on the mailman to run, and what a great thing. It can be something that exuberant. It can be something as minute as ordering a chocolate bar to satisfy a sweet tooth, or maybe you're on a road trip in New Orleans like Derek Parker and forgot your laptop charger. Now you've been mooching off of Rylan Stiles' MacBook charger. I don't know why we're from ourselves with the third person. But you've been mooching off my laptop charger. Maybe you should just order yourself another one, a new one. Maybe that's the key. Check it out today at DoorDash. They're fantastic. They have everything you need, and there's more than what you would even imagine. So right now, at DoorDash, you can get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour or convenience or grocery or retail order by using code LOCKEDONNBA. That is LOCKEDONNBA. Order while using DoorDash today. Terms and conditions do apply. Use code LOCKEDONNBA. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your teams every day. Walking in New Orleans, just as Josh Giddey is. Josh Giddey is phenomenal in New Orleans. Another really good game from him, and one that I think is going to get stolen by the pizzazz, if you will. You look at it, and it had a lot of je ne sais quoi in this game. I don't know if I used that right, but the 4 threes are awesome. And that's what gets the people going. But his physicality and his ability to play team defense, I think, is the showstopper. And I think that he deserves a lot of credit for that. And I know that people don't like to, break down the as a nerd. Let's just talk about how, here's a guy that's 21 years old. And as a 21-year-old, his role has completely shifted in the NBA for a third straight season. So that makes 4 massive changes in the last 4 years. And I think that this season, he's been tasked with being more physical than he's ever been, playing a more physically demanding role than he's ever played. And as the seasons progress, especially since March 1st, you've seen that physicality be tested, and he's rose to the occasion more often than not. And I think that part of that comes with being more comfortable. Part of that comes with understanding his role, and part of that comes with there's no other option. You've got to play connective team defense. While you're never going to be even a top 4 defender on most of the lineups you're out there with, can you be a quality 5th defender who plays great on the entry passes and rotates very well and just stays in front of his man? He's done that to his credit. I think he's done this whole series to his credit, even if the shots weren't falling. Then you saw in game number 3, the shots went down. And anytime the shots go down, they look good. And I don't know what it is about New Orleans. I haven't figured it out yet. Maybe it's the humidity that he likes. There's certainly enough of that to go around. I'll be pushing my complaints about the Oklahoma weather deeper into the summer after dealing with New Orleans in April. Nonetheless, though, he loves playing in New Orleans. He played phenomenal in New Orleans in game 3. If you get a big Josh Giddey game in game 4, you can break out every broom in the universe. You can just break it out and start sweeping. How sweep it is that the Thunder might get their first series win since 2016 tonight in NOLA. Another factor is going to be, I think, in game 4, what the Pelicans look like from the word go. Because I hate to do this. I hate to try to jump into the mind of these players and these people. Like, we're not in their shoes. We cannot know what they're going through. But for the sake of this pod, we're going to do that for a second. Certainly the body language that was put on display on Saturday was that of a team that quit, was that of a team that no longer cared about what was happening on the court, about what happens in this series. And so there's oftentimes a point of pride or emphasis of not getting swept. And not to say these guys won't play with pride. They're going to play with pride. They're going to play hard. But if you can land that first punch and not let them get started hot, like if you can start well in this game, arguably start well for one of the first times this series. You go back to the Game 2 blowout win, and it was Valanciunas rattling off 11 straight points. Now the Thunder did have 12 at that timeout, so it was 12-11. But if they can start out just really, really red hot and force Willie Green to call the first timeout, if that was a message that the Thunder had, I believe it was that Kings comeback, that final Kings comeback in the Paycom Center, forcing them to call the first timeout out of the half. If you can force them to call the first timeout in the first quarter, you're going to win this game. You're going to sweep this team, and you're going to get cruising into what's been a fantastic setup for the Thunder in the NBA bracket. So starting fast, I think, is huge. If you get a Josh Giddey game, this thing is over. And I think that beyond that, you're looking at a situation where this can really break OKC's way. We went over all week long last week how important that rest was for Chet, how important rest was for this team. And yeah, there might have been some rest in game one because they missed wide open shots, but in general, it didn't impact them that much. And I think that now they're even better equipped to handle a longer layoff. And when you see the Clippers get that game in Dallas, and now that series is at least going 6 games, you take care of business tonight in New Orleans. You fly home, and you've got ample off days for Chet, who played all 82, for Lou, who just had to blow up every single screen and fight through everything and stick with BI all series long, and not only stick with him, not only compete, but thoroughly and absolutely dominate him. Oh, and not only dominate the best scoring option that the Pelicans had, but go and hold your own offensively as well and have a night like you did in game 3. Who knows what you're going to do in game 4 and splash in threes. You give these guys time off, it's going to be massive. Then you're welcoming in a more tired team to the Paycom Center. And if this Paycom Center crowd and this fan base has only had 2 shots at playoff games, and they're just chomping at the bit to get back into the Paycom Center, to get those free T-shirts, to get those cardboard clappers that only the Thunder fan base wears out, literally breaks them into shambles during the game, then there's no shot of either the Clippers or the Mavs taking game 1. And then you take game 1 with home court and you run with it, and it's only up from there, and you just kind of push forward. So the Clippers result was huge. The Thunder can especially make them pay either side by winning on Monday on NBA TV at 7:30. But I do want to talk about the fan base for a second. Yes, this is a bit indulgent and pandering a little bit because we're making up for the Saturday pod, but it's true. This Thunder fan base deserves all the kudos in the world because you make the trip down here to New Orleans, and not only did the Thunder fan base overwhelm Pelicans fans and roars of OKC and barks were heard over Pelican fans, but it just speaks to the purity almost of what the Thunder players and organization gets to deal with. I hate to say it this way because it feels belittling to the work that the Thunder and the work that the state has done to become a more basketball-laden state and a big league city, as Mayor Holt would say. And we passed a massive arena bill and we did everything to be a big league city. But the crowd, the root of the people in Oklahoma City are that of these blue-collar college fans that are rowdy, that are raucous, that are loud, and how much does that really play into it? We'll never know. We'll never know how much it really impacts games, but you certainly can feel the difference. I'll tell you, selfishly, it's a massive difference for my job. Like getting to feed off of the energy of the crowd is huge, just from my job. So I can't even imagine what it's like on the actual court playing the actual game. But the crowd lets you understand the picture and lets you kind of complete the Picasso painting of what these games are, what these games mean to people, what these games mean in the grand scheme of things, what these games mean in the series, and getting that overwhelming hit of dopamine in games 1 and 2, and then coming to this just awful crowd in New Orleans. As I say publicly in the streets of New Orleans, hopefully not going to get murdered for this, figuratively. It really puts into perspective, like, the fact that when you look around the NBA, there's very few crowds like it. There's very few crowds who are not a more professional crowd. That's the difference in NFL and college football. The NFL football product, like the play on the field, is fantastic. It's a much better version of football in the NFL. But you cannot simulate the environment. You cannot simulate the crowd. You cannot simulate what you can do in the college ranks. And so that plays a massive part in what makes college football great, even as leagues are shifting and conferences are changing. It's the same way in Oklahoma City. Like, it is noticeable. And I think that speaks to how much it does impact the game. Because if you're used to playing in front of stuffy-nosed millionaires on the court, in the suites, or fans that don't show up, or whatever the case is, and then you go on the road and play a team like Oklahoma City, it's got to be a shock in the heart, at least for a few minutes. And if those minutes are in the front end or back end, it really impacts the game. So a huge shout out to the Thunder fan base. J-Dub talked about it too. J-Dub put it into a unique perspective of being appreciative, and this is paraphrasing. I have the entire video clip on Twitter at Ryland_Styles if you want to go back and listen to it in his words. But his gist of it was being appreciative that they separated themselves from the 2012 team. And I think that's a good point, because oftentimes an organization gets shoeboxed into their first memories. Like, the Bulls are never going to be more than the MJ Bulls. Like, they could rattle off 5 championships in a row. It would not match what the MJ Bulls were. And there was a long period of time and a significant stretch of time where it looked like this Thunder franchise would never be more than 3 straight MVPs and the 2012 team and the run that KD and Russ went on. But this fan base has done a great job of separating art from artist and church from state, of rallying around this young Thunder team, appreciating what it is, and getting back to this level. And when you look at how different the two teams are on the court, how different they are off the court, when you look at how this team is set up for success for the next 5+ years, I think that it also not only allows the organization and the team to feel a certain level of gratitude, but also allows the fans to appreciate it more. Of back in 2013, back in 2012, back in these early days, that was our first taste of professional basketball, period. And a lot of people in Oklahoma had never even watched the NBA before. Had never followed an NBA season before. And so their first experience was, this just happened. This is what happens. Like, every single year, you're a really good team and you go to the playoffs and it's all great. And then you go through that lull period and the pandemic and no fans in the stands and everything else. And then you get back to a point where the whole rebuild, people were telling you that it was never going to be that good again. You were never going to draft that many talented players again. You were never going to build a roster that talented again. And you look at this team with the Coach of the Year on it, as Mark wins the award officially on Sunday for the NBA. He already won the Coaches Association. He swept the honors, which in and of itself is a big deal. We'll talk about that more. But you have the Coach of the Year. You have a back-to-back top five finisher in MVP in SGA. He's finished top 3 this year, top 5 last year. Should win the award this year, but we'll see if the voters agree. I don't think that they did, but we'll see whenever that officially gets announced. You have 2 just fantastic rising stars in J-Dub and Chet, and then you have a plethora of depth, a plethora of complementary players, a plethora of cap space, an overwhelming number of draft picks. And you just have gotten back to that point. You've gotten back to a point where you're determined and forecasted to be a fantastic team from here to the foreseeable future. But Mark did win Coach of the Year. That's huge as an honor. It's especially huge because oftentimes when you're the runner-up, and Billy Donovan, didn't see this through, but he experienced this a little bit. When you're the runner-up for Coach of the Year, it's almost like, it's basically like you won, so you don't get back to that stage, don't get back to that platform. They kind of want to spread the wealth around, so to say, and honor many people. Whereas, like, if you're the Coach of the Year runner-up, it's kind of like you got the award. If you get the praise for it, it's good enough. But to make a 17-win jump after making the leap from 24 to 40 wins, making the leap from 40 to 57 wins, and the ride he's been on since becoming the head coach, it really puts into perspective just how great he is, how great this team is. And the organization, first time ever that a team has hired 3 straight coaches of the year. Scotty Brooks and Mark won the awards voted on by the players, and Mark also won the Coaches Association one. Billy Donovan won the Coaches Association one in 1920, and at the time, the massive storyline was that he should have won the media award as well, and I wouldn't push back on that at all one bit. So it's been a fantastic run of hires, too, from this organization in terms of their sideline pacers. We did a lot of yapping on this podcast. I'm not sure how much you've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed recording it. I hope you've enjoyed listening to it. I hope that the background noise is not as bad this time. There's still a little jazz playing, but it's New Orleans. There's always jazz playing. At least that's what I think is happening after a night out with Matty T, my GOAT, Nicky Gallo, my GOAT. It's been real. It's been fun. We'll record another pod tomorrow. What a time. The Thunder could be having won their first round series. But the next time that we talk, it'll be very fun. Until then, be good and be good to one another.